You've probably heard about Netflix's show Monster. It's a huge hit, right? But it's also got people asking a pretty serious question. Where does entertainment stop and exploiting real-life tragedy begin? Today we're going to dig in and look at the shocking gap between the stories the show tells and the devastating truth.
I want you to really read this. This is a real comment somebody posted online about Jeffrey Dahmer. You know, the man who murdered and cannibalized 17 people. It's a perfect and honestly pretty scary example of how these fictional shows are blurring the lines for people, leading to this bizarre, disturbing sympathy for a convicted serial killer.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. What is going on here? How on earth are some of the most horrific criminals in history getting rebranded as these tragic, misunderstood figures online? Let's break it down.
Turns out there's actually a clinical term for this phenomenon, hybristophilia. And this goes way beyond just being curious about a dark story. We're talking about a genuine romanticization of killers, where they're seen as these troubled, tormented souls instead of, well, the monsters they actually were.
Okay, so let's dive into the season that really kicked this whole thing off, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. The big promise from the creators was that this time it would be all about the victims. But did the show actually deliver on that?
And right away, you see this massive disconnect. On one side, you have the promise they made to all of us, but on the other, you have the heartbreaking reality for the victims' families, who said their absolute worst, most traumatic moments were just recreated for a global audience to binge watch, without anyone ever asking them.
I mean, this quote right here, from the family of Errol Lindsay, one of Dahmer's victims, it just completely blows up the show's official story. It shows how the production ended up re-traumatizing the very people it claimed it was trying to honor. It's just devastating.
So what happened when the show dropped? Well, the internet did its thing, and it got pretty ugly. We saw thirst trap edits of the actor playing Dahmer going viral. People were dressing up as him for Halloween. It was this massive wave of desensitization, turning real violence into entertainment and romanticizing a murderer. It feeds right back into that hybristophilia we were just talking about.
All right, let's move on to Season 2, The Menendez Brothers. Now, this case is definitely more complex. You've got two brothers who killed their parents, but they claimed they did it after suffering years and years of the most horrific abuse.
But this is where the show it just makes stuff up. They invented this really suggestive sexual storyline between the two brothers. In reality, the brothers testified about the deep trauma of sexual abuse from their father. The show took that trauma and twisted it into a provocative, taboo plot point that just wasn't true.
It's no surprise the family absolutely condemned the series. Eric Menendez himself even put out this statement from prison, calling the show out for its horrible lies. And you know how the family found out about this show? The same way we all did, when the trailer just popped up online one day.
And the creator's defense for all this? Get this. He actually claimed the show was the best thing that happened to the Menendez brothers in 30 years because it brought awareness to their case. It just goes to show you the massive, massive gulf between what the creators say they're doing and the pain the families actually feel.
And that brings us to the latest season, which focuses on Ed Gein, the real-life killer who inspired characters like Norman Bates from Psycho. Now, Gein only had 2 confirmed murders. So to fill a whole season, the show had to get, let's say, very creative with the facts.
So how do you stretch a story with only 2 confirmed murders into 10 hours of television? Well, it looks like there's a recipe for that. First, you cast a really charismatic, good-looking actor. Then you just invent some new murders and fake relationships. And finally, you wrap it all up and sell it as this deep, sincere exploration of the human condition.
And the stuff they just made up for this season is kind of staggering. The show has Gein murdering 2 hunters, kidnapping a real missing girl named Evelyn Hartley, and even killing his own brother. Oh, and they invent a whole new character to be his female partner in crime. There's zero evidence for any of this. It's pure drama, not history.
But out of all the things they made up, this one might be the worst. The show takes Bernice Worden, a real 58-year-old woman that Ed Gein murdered, and they rewrite her as his secret lover. They literally turned a brutal, senseless murder into a twisted romance subplot just to make the show more dramatic.
And if that wasn't heartbreaking enough, get this, Bernice Worden's real-life son was the town deputy. He had to help investigate his own mother's murder. Can you even imagine what it would be like for his family to see her memory and her death twisted like this for entertainment?
So what's the big deal? What's the real impact when you twist history this dramatically? I mean, who does it actually serve? And more importantly, who does it hurt?
You know, this chart really says it all, doesn't it? The show spends hours and hours trying to get us to understand the killer, to sympathize with his trauma. And in the process, the focus on honoring the actual victims and their stories, well, it just shrinks down to almost nothing.
And this isn't just a theory. You can see the results online. Just look at the conversations around the Ed Gein season. It is dominated by people feeling sorry for him, creating this disturbing fan art. We're talking nail art and cakes of his crimes, and just generally glorifying violence. And concern for the actual victims? It's just a tiny, tiny sliver of the conversation.
And here's where it gets really wild. The actor who played Ed Gein, Charlie Hunnam, actually said this. He asks who the real monster is, the abused boy, or all the people who sensationalized his life for entertainment. And on the surface, yeah, that sounds pretty deep. But come on, that is just so unbelievably hypocritical, right? He's standing there condemning the sensationalism of Gann's life while he's actively promoting the multi-million-dollar Netflix show that is doing exactly that. It's like setting your own house on fire and then trying to give a TED Talk about fire safety.
The series really wants to position itself as this deep critique, holding up a mirror to our society's weird fascination with evil. But it seems totally unable to see its own reflection, to see its own role in creating the very culture it claims to be critiquing.
And that leaves us with one final, really uncomfortable question. In this whole cycle of shock, profit, and then hitting play next episode, when we turn real human suffering into our next binge watch, who's the real monster?